Mom slapped me for kicking my sister out, then a month later, she called in total shock. On my birthday, right in front of everyone, my mother slapped me for kicking my spoiled sister out of my own house. "How dare you throw your sister out," she yelled. "This is the day I regret bringing you into this world." I left in tears. She had no idea who her precious daughter really was. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you don't miss any interesting stories, and yes. A month later, she called me, her voice filled with shock. "Why didn't you tell me? I never imagined this day would come." Standing inside my very own apartment, keys clutched in my hand, I couldn't stop grinning. After years of scraping together every dollar, renting a tiny place, and sacrificing little luxuries, I had finally done it. I, Avery Monroe, was now a homeowner. Everyone always said I was the responsible one in the family. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Sophie, bounced from one boyfriend to the next, relying on them to fund her lifestyle. While she lived off others, I put in long hours at Westfield Consulting Group, saving every bit I could. Mom always defended Sophie, saying she was just finding herself, but I knew better. She had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in Mom's eyes. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter, feeling the smooth surface beneath my fingertips. "This is my kitchen," I whispered. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine. The mortgage payments wouldn't be easy, but I had planned everything down to the last detail. I had spreadsheets, budgets, and expense trackers. I was always the planner, the responsible one. Or, as Sophie liked to call me, the boring one. To celebrate, I decided on a small housewarming, just a handful of close friends from work and a few old schoolmates. I even invited Mom and Sophie, though I didn't expect them to show. Mom's response was predictable. "Oh, honey, I'm swamped with work this weekend." You know how it is. Sophie didn't even bother replying. Typical. Cheryl from accounting was the first to arrive, handing me a bottle of wine with a grin. "Avery, this place is amazing," she said. One by one, my friends trickled in. Derek and Lauren from high school brought a houseplant, and my co-worker Ethan arrived with a cheese platter. Before long, the apartment buzzed with laughter and conversation, the kind of warmth that makes a place feel like home. Later that night, Derek raised his glass. "To Avery," he said. "Proof that hard work and determination still pay off." The room erupted in cheers, and I felt my eyes sting with tears. These people, my chosen family, were here to celebrate me. Mom and Sophie's absence stung a little, but I was used to it. They had always prioritized each other over me. 3 weeks after the party, on a quiet Friday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Dressed in my worn-out sweatpants with my hair messily tied up, I had been in the middle of some light cleaning. When I opened the door, my heart skipped a beat. Mom and Sophie stood there, wearing those all-too-familiar expressions. "Well, aren't you going to let us in?" Mom asked, brushing past me before I could even respond. Her designer purse dangled on her arm as she strode inside like she owned the place. Sophie followed, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like some kind of celebrity. "I wasn't expecting you," I said, still standing near the open door. Mom was already in my kitchen, rummaging through cabinets and drawers as if it were hers. "Avery, you haven't even started dinner?" "It's already 5 o'clock, she scoffed. I let out a long sigh, shutting the door behind me. "Mom, how was I supposed to start dinner when I didn't even know you were coming?" She waved a dismissive hand, as if my words meant nothing, an all-too-familiar gesture that always made me feel small. "You've always been hopeless with household chores," she muttered. "I tried to teach you," Mom huffed, shaking her head. "But you were always too busy burying your nose in those accounting books." Meanwhile, Sophie strolled through my apartment like she was sizing up a house on the market. She traced her fingers along the walls, peeked into every room, and kept shaking her head like she was silently judging every inch of the place. "I'll make some tea," I said, forcing politeness even though they had barged in uninvited. As I filled the kettle, Sophie finally settled at the kitchen table. She slid off her sunglasses and gave me that look, the one she always used when she wanted something. "You know," she said, her voice carrying that familiar, ominous tone, "this is actually a nice place, Avery." She paused, scanning the room. The location is perfect. Right in the middle of everything. Thanks, I replied cautiously, setting out 3 mugs. Mom was still picking apart the way I had organized my kitchen, but I had learned to drown her out years ago. Sophie idly ran a finger along the edge of the table before sighing dramatically. I have some news, she announced. Lucas and I broke up. She let out another exaggerated sigh. He actually expected me to start paying rent. Can you believe that? 7 months together, and suddenly I'm supposed to chip in? I bit my tongue and focused on pouring the tea. Anyway, she continued, barely missing a beat, I had to move out of his place obviously. And, rent these days is insane. She let the words hang in the air, waiting for me to absorb them before casually dropping the real reason for her visit. So, I was thinking, maybe I could stay here with you for a few months? I froze mid-motion, the mug in my hand hovering just above the table. Just for a little while, she added quickly. 4 months, tops. Just until I find a job and get back on my feet. I set the mug down carefully and shook my head. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, keeping my voice firm but measured. I just moved in myself, and honestly, I really need my space. The air in the kitchen shifted. Mom's voice sliced through it like a knife. How dare you be so selfish, she snapped. Your sister is struggling. She has nowhere to go. No money. And here you are, sitting in your fancy new apartment all alone, refusing to help your own flesh and blood. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Mom, Sophie can stay with you, I said, keeping my tone even. Your house has more than enough space. Before Mom could respond, Sophie groaned loudly. Oh my God, Avery. Have you seen where Mom lives? It's like a retirement village. She threw her hands in the air dramatically. It's all old people walking their dogs and tucking in at 8 o'clock. It's a perfectly nice neighborhood, I started, but Sophie wasn't done. Your place, though, it's right in the center of everything. She gestured toward the windows. Clubs, bars, shops, actual places where I can meet people and make connections. How am I supposed to rebuild my life stuck in the suburbs? You're being incredibly selfish, Mom chimed in, shaking her head in disapproval. After everything we've done for you. And just like that, they launched into their routine, taking turns like a well-rehearsed team. Sophie would sniffle, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, trying to play the victim. When that didn't work, Mom would shift gears into a speech about family loyalty, hammering me with guilt. Back and forth they went, like a relentless tennis match. Then Mom delivered the final blow. Your father would be so disappointed in you, she said, her voice heavy with accusation. He always taught you girls to take care of each other. What would he think if he could see you now, turning your back on your own sister? That one hit hard. Dad had been gone 6 years now. And Mom knew exactly how to wield his memory like a weapon. I felt the fight drain right out of me, like water swirling down a bathtub. Fine. The word slipped out before I could stop it, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth that would linger for months. That was all Sophie needed. In an instant, her tears vanished like magic. Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I wasn't going to let her get away that easily. There are conditions, I said, trying to sound firm. You need to find a job, save up, and move out in 4 months. I mean it. Of course, of course. Sophie practically bounced out of her seat, throwing her arms around me. You're the best sister ever. I'll start job hunting tomorrow. I stood stiffly, arms at my sides, not returning the hug. Across the room, Mom looked satisfied, like a chess player who had just won the match. The very next evening, Sophie arrived at my door with 3 oversized suitcases and several shopping bags. I barely had time to process what I'd just signed up for before she was pushing her way inside. So, where's my room? She asked, already wheeling her luggage down the hall. She glanced around before stopping at my bedroom door. Peeking inside, she grinned. This one's perfect. The view is amazing. That's my room, I said flatly. You'll be staying in the guest bedroom. I added quickly, or you can go back to Mom's. Sophie pouted but didn't argue. I watched as she reluctantly dragged her suitcases into the smaller room, her shoulders sagging in disappointment. That first night, I made us pasta for dinner. Sophie was still unpacking, grumbling about the lack of closet space, when I called her to the table. I figured I should set some ground rules right away. Okay, I said, watching her twirl spaghetti around her fork. If we're going to live together, we need to have some boundaries. First rule, no loud noise. I wake up early for work, and these walls aren't exactly soundproof. Fine, fine, she mumbled between bites. This is really good, by the way. Second, be mindful of utilities. That means no marathon showers, I added, shooting her a look. I still remembered Mom's outrageous water bills when we were teenagers. And turn off the lights when you leave a room. Sophie rolled her eyes. I'm not 12, Avery. I know how to flip a light switch. Ignoring her attitude, I continued, and most importantly, no guests without asking me first. This is my apartment, and I need to know who's coming and going. Sophie set down her fork and met my eyes. I get it, Avery. Really? Her voice was steady, her expression serious. I know I haven't always been responsible, but I want to prove that I've changed. I'm going to get a job, save money, and be out of your hair before you know it. For the first time in a long time, she actually sounded sincere. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she had grown up. Maybe this could actually work. The first week went smoother than I expected. I left early for work, and Sophie spent her mornings preparing for job interviews, or so she claimed. She even started cooking dinner. Nothing fancy, but still, it was nice to come home to a warm meal and a clean kitchen. How was the interview today? I asked one evening, picking at a surprisingly decent chicken stir-fry she had made. Really good, she said excitedly, launching into a story about some marketing firm downtown. They said they'd call me back next week. That became our new routine for the next 3 weeks. I'd come home to dinner, a tidy apartment, and Sophie, buzzing with stories about different companies she'd visited. And little by little, I started to believe it. Maybe, just maybe, my sister had finally changed. Then, little by little, things started to shift. At first, it was small things, dirty dishes piling up in the sink, meals left uncooked. Then, the cooking stopped altogether. I'd come home after a long day at work to find Sophie sprawled out on the couch, glued to her phone, the apartment looking exactly as I'd left it, or worse. One evening, after an exhausting shift, I walked through the door and saw her in the exact same spot she'd been in that morning when I left. The only difference? She'd ordered takeout just for herself and left the empty containers scattered across my coffee table. I sighed, setting my bag down and heading to the kitchen to make dinner. Meanwhile, Sophie stayed where she was, eyes locked on her phone, thumbs moving lazily over the screen. When the smell of food finally lured her in, she wandered into the kitchen. Sophie, I said, keeping my voice as even as possible. I thought we agreed to share the household chores. She groaned, plopping into a chair and helping herself to the stir-fry I'd just made. Ugh, I'm so sick of cooking and cleaning. It's boring. I clenched my jaw. How was job hunting today? She shrugged, chewing. Went to another interview. They want, 6 years of experience for an entry-level job. Can you believe that? Did you apply anyway? She scoffed. No way. I'm not wasting my time on companies with dumb requirements like that. A month into this so-called temporary arrangement, any hope I had that Sophie was turning her life around was completely gone. My apartment had become her personal crash pad. While I was working, she was out partying. Every night, I could hear her loud phone conversations through the walls, so could my neighbors, who were less than thrilled. More than once, I overheard her in the morning while I was getting ready for work. Sorry, can't talk now. Yeah, totally hungover. No, my sister's still here. OMG, she's so uptight. That night, she stumbled in at 3 a.m., reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. I was already awake, of course. How could I sleep when she was banging around like a drunk elephant? The next morning, she finally emerged from her room around noon, still wearing last night's clothes. "Avery," she croaked, flopping onto the couch dramatically. "I need you to run to the pharmacy. I'm dying. I need those hangover pills, the ones with the electrolytes." Without looking up, I said, "There's water and Advil in the kitchen." She groaned. "You're the worst. A good sister would help." That was it. I had finally had enough. That evening, I picked up the phone and called Mom. "Mom, you need to talk to Sophie," I said the second she answered. "She's not even trying to find a job. She's out partying every night, sleeping all day." "Oh, Avery," Mom interrupted, her tone dismissive as ever. "You're making such a big deal out of nothing. She just needs time to figure things out. You were always so serious at her age. You never knew how to have fun." Meanwhile, my apartment was deteriorating by the day. Sophie's room had transformed into a disaster zone. Dishes stacked up on every surface, old takeout containers sat forgotten, and clothes were thrown everywhere. It was disgusting. I stopped even looking in there. The few times I tried to clean up, I found moldy coffee cups hidden under piles of laundry, wine bottles rolling across the floor, and plates with food so old it was unrecognizable. One evening, when she was actually home for once, I finally confronted her. "Sophie, this has to stop." She barely looked up. "You're not looking for a job. You're not helping around the house. And your room." That set her off. Without a word, she stormed into her room, slammed the door so hard the walls shook, and immediately started dialing her phone. 25 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Avery," she screeched before I could even say hello. "How dare you harass your sister?" She just called me in tears. I took a deep breath. "Mom, you don't understand." "No, you don't understand," she snapped. "She's trying her best, and all you do is criticize her. I raised you better than this." I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it like it had personally betrayed me. There was no point arguing. I knew exactly how this conversation would go. The next 3 months dragged by like a slow, miserable punishment. My utility bills doubled thanks to Sophie's hour-long showers, her habit of leaving every light on, and blasting the AC at full power even when she wasn't home. I was spending a fortune on groceries she devoured without ever contributing. The kitchen was always a disaster unless I cleaned it myself. Meanwhile, Sophie's social life was thriving. She came and went at all hours, always dressed to the nines, always heading out to some club or party, always surrounded by new friends. She helped herself to everything, my food, my wine, my toiletries, anything she could get her hands on. But work? That was beneath her. Then came Monday. The sound of keys jangling and drunken giggling yanked me out of a dead sleep. I cracked one eye open, squinting at my alarm clock. 4:15 a.m. Another late-night return. But something was different this time. There were 3 voices. I threw on my robe and stepped into the hallway. What I saw made me stop cold. Sophie was barely standing, her makeup smeared halfway down her face, her hair a tangled mess. But she wasn't alone. A guy I had never seen before had his arms slung around her waist like he owned her. He was tall, wearing a leather jacket despite the summer heat, and had that smug, cocky look I'd seen on too many of Sophie's exes. Sophie noticed me and beamed like she'd just found a lost puppy. "Oh, hey, Avery," she slurred. "This is Connor. Isn't he hot?" Connor barely glanced at me before turning back to her, pressing his lips to her neck. I felt my blood pressure spike. "Sophie," I said sharply, crossing my arms. "What is he doing here?" She grinned like she was about to share the best news ever. "Connor's gonna stay with us," she announced. His roommate kicked him out. Can you believe that? It felt like someone had dumped ice water over my head. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice flat. "Oh, don't be such a buzzkill," Connor finally spoke, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Your sister said it wouldn't be a problem." Then, right there in front of me, they started making out again. Connor's hands started wandering, and I had to fight the urge to bleach my own eyes. Enough! I snapped. Connor, you need to leave. Now. Sophie pulled away, her face twisting in annoyance. No way. He's staying with me, she huffed. This is my apartment, I shot back, my voice rising despite my best effort to stay calm. You don't get to move in random guys without asking me first. Sophie's face turned red. You're such trash, she screamed. You've always been jealous of my relationships. That was it. The last shred of my patience snapped. Get out, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Both of you. Now. Sophie swayed slightly, eyes widening. You can't kick me out. I live here. No, I said, stepping past her. I walked into her room, yanked her suitcases from the closet, and threw them onto the bed. You were supposed to stay here temporarily. You were supposed to be looking for a job. You were supposed to be trying. I turned to face her. Now pack your things. For a moment, Sophie just stood there, staring at me. Then, without warning, she exploded into motion, yanking clothes off hangers, shoving things into her suitcases with wild, jerky movements. It was like watching a tornado rip through a department store. Connor lingered in the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. 17 minutes later, she slammed the last suitcase shut so hard I thought the zipper might snap. Grabbing the handles with white-knuckled fury, she spun toward me, her eyes blazing. Fine. Keep your stupid apartment, she shouted, her voice shaking. You're a horrible sister. You've always been horrible. I hate you. With that, she yanked her suitcases toward the door, Connor trailing behind her. As she stomped out, she hurled every curse word she could think of at me, her voice echoing down the hallway. Then, slam. The door rattled on its hinges. My picture frames shuddered against the walls. And then, silence. I stood there, my hands shaking, my chest tight. It took exactly 45 minutes for my phone to ring. Mom! Her name flashed across the screen like an omen. The second I picked up, she was screaming. How dare you throw your sister out in the middle of the night? She could have been hurt. I hung up. Then I turned off my phone completely. The silence in my apartment was too quiet. For the first few days, I focused on deep cleaning. Sophie had left behind an absolute disaster. Moldy dishes under the bed. Wine stains on the carpet. Sticky, unidentifiable spots on nearly every surface in the guest room. I filled garbage bag after garbage bag, hauling out what felt like an entire landfill's worth of trash. When the locksmith arrived to change the locks, he barely raised an eyebrow. Better safe than sorry, I muttered as he installed the new deadbolt. He just nodded, handed me the fresh set of keys, and left. When I held them in my palm, they felt like freedom. My birthday was coming up soon, and for the first time in years, I decided to actually celebrate. In my home. Sophie free. I invited my closest work friends, some old classmates, and a few cousins from Dad's side, the ones who actually understood the situation with Mom and Sophie. I did not invite Mom. I did not invite Sophie. I just wanted one day, one, without drama. The party started off perfectly. Cheryl from accounting brought her famous chocolate cake. Derek and Lauren showed up with a bottle of my favorite wine. My cousin Amy handed me a beautiful houseplant and gave me a knowing smile. To celebrate your reclaimed space, she said. I grinned, setting it on the kitchen counter. The apartment was filled with warmth, laughter, peace. We were all gathered in the living room, swapping stories, when the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. I knew that ring. Not tonight. Please, not tonight. I opened the door, and there she was. Mom! She stormed inside like a dark cloud rolling over a summer sky, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Not a happy birthday. Not a smile. She planted herself in the center of the living room and lifted her chin, her voice ringing out like a judge passing sentence. I cannot believe you're all here, celebrating with her. She gestured dramatically at me when she threw her own sister onto the street in the middle of the night. The room fell silent. I saw the shift in my friends' faces, the flicker of discomfort, the sideways glances. I swallowed hard. "Mom," I said quietly. "This isn't the time." "When is the time?" she snapped, her voice rising. "When is the time to talk about how cruel and heartless you've become? Your poor sister has been devastated." Mom's voice trembled with outrage. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Sophie acted terribly," I said evenly. "She took advantage of my kindness. She was selfish." Mom's face twisted with fury. Her voice shot up another octave. "And what are you? A selfish, cold-hearted woman. That's what you've turned into. Is this what you wanted? To sit alone in your fancy apartment while your sister struggles?" Something inside me snapped. Maybe if you'd spent less time spoiling Sophie and more time actually parenting her, she wouldn't be struggling. Crack! The slap landed so hard, my head whipped to the side. A sharp, stinging heat spread across my cheek. I staggered back, pressing a hand to my face, stunned. Mom's eyes burned with rage. "Ungrateful brat," she spat. "You're no daughter of mine." Then she spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, my body rigid, my vision blurred with unshed tears. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't. But then Amy moved first, pulling me into a tight embrace. And just like that, the dam broke. The rest of my guests gathered around, murmuring soft words of comfort. But it didn't matter. The party was ruined. My perfect, drama-free birthday had been destroyed in less than 10 minutes. 4 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Amy. "I just thought you should know," she said carefully. "Sophie and that boyfriend of hers? They moved into your mom's house." I changed the subject. I didn't want to know more. 5 months passed. I threw myself into work. Redesigned my apartment. Took up yoga. Life was peaceful. No drama. No late-night disruptions. No screaming phone calls. Just quiet mornings with my coffee and evenings curled up with a book. Then, one afternoon, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost ignored it. But something, curiosity, maybe made me pick up. "Avery," she breathed. Her voice was different. Softer. Worn. "Please don't hang up," she said. "I need you to listen." I stayed silent. "You were right," she admitted, her voice breaking. "About everything." A shaky breath. "Sophie, she's out of control," she whispered. "She and that Connor person have taken over my house. They don't work. They don't help with anything. They just make a mess over and over again." I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "They throw these parties," she continued, "in my house, in my quiet neighborhood. And when I tried to stop them last week, Sophie..." Her voice cracked. "She pushed me." A sharp silence. "Avery," she sobbed. "She actually pushed me down." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. I remembered my birthday. The sting of her slap. The disgust in her voice. "Ungrateful brat. You're no daughter of mine." I took a slow breath and spoke evenly. "You need to handle this yourself, Mom." A pause. "Your golden daughter is your problem now." Then I hung up. Blocked her number. But updates still trickled in through the family gossip chain. Amy called regularly with news. Mom ended up filing an eviction lawsuit against Sophie and Connor. The house turned into a war zone. Daily screaming matches loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. One night, the police even showed up after concerned neighbors reported a disturbance. Apparently, one of Sophie and Connor's wild parties spiraled so far out of control that someone thought they heard a fight. "Aren't you worried about them?" Amy asked me one day. I didn't even have to think about it. No, I said honestly. Mom made her choice a long time ago. She always picked Sophie over me. Always defended her. Always made excuses. Always made me the bad guy for refusing to enable her. This was the result. I don't know how the eviction case ended. I don't know if Sophie and Connor finally left or if they're still making Mom's life miserable. I don't know if Mom finally learned her lesson or if she's still bending over backward to make excuses for her precious younger daughter. But here's what I do know. My apartment is peaceful. My bills are back to normal. My dishes stay clean. My lights get turned off. No one helps themselves to my food or my wine. And I sleep through the night. No drunk giggling. No slamming doors. Just peace.